Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
We had such a great interview with Alina Trigub on today's show. She is the founder and managing partner of SAMO Financial, basically an equity firm where she helps people passively invest in commercial real estate. We cover so many different things with Alina, from her path to investing in syndications to why she's doing that, active versus passive investing. And really what was amazing with our interview with her today was really getting into the power of mobile home parks and why it's so important to diversify asset classes. So we get into some pros and cons and how to do your due diligence when you're buying potentially a mobile home park or investing in a mobile home park. So it's really, really neat episode. You're going to love it. And Alina knows what she's talking about because she was a former CPA and she knows her stuff when it comes to these, the different pieces of a financial statements and syndications and all that good stuff. So enjoy the episode. Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz, and you are back with the Real Estate Investor Show. And I know most of you are ready for me to say, this is Liz, and then Andressa typically says, and this is Andressa, but I am running solo today. But it's all good. Andressa will be back with us next week. But in the meantime, we have a phenomenal guest on this week's episode, and on the Real Estate Investor Show, Alina Trigub. Alina, thank you so much for being on our show.
Liz, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Alina and I have known each other for quite some time, so it's really a pleasure for me to interview her and all the neat stuff that she's up to, which we'll jump into in a moment. But Alina, typically we kind of start the show getting connected to our audience because it's all women listening, and we're all on this path to creating more financial freedom in our lives and doing it in a balanced way, which sometimes doesn't always go together. So I wanted to share an interesting thing I actually got from a meditation. I'm really getting connected to an app called Calm. I know many people have used it, but it's CALM. And it's literally, they give you 10-minute meditations every day. It's just wonderful. I've always done the, in and out. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, but I've been really consistent for about a month. And they shared something this morning I just wanted to share with our audience. She said, when you're working through difficult emotions, which I know all of us have, and all of us have different triggers, right? For different reasons. For me, it's my kids,
Oh, I can relate to that one.
Right? I'm patient for I'm patient. And then I go to 10, and I get a little intense at times. Yeah. So with my emotions. So she shared this little acronym called SANE. And it's kind of neat because it's all about staying sane, right? But the letters are SAIN. And the S stands for when you're working through a difficult emotion, S stands for stop. A stands for allow. The I stands for investigate. And the N stands for non-identification. And I just really loved it because she basically said, when you're working through these difficult emotions, start to become an observer. And it's really hard when you're in the emotion.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, right? But I'm really going to take this on. So stop, allow it, right? So if it's anger, allow the anger or allow it, then investigate it. Like, what's coming up for me? What caused this? What triggered this? What feelings am I having? What physical, effects am I having? And then she says the N is the non-identification, meaning don't identify to it. Start to become separate from it. Again, I thought it was a neat concept, and just to do more in my life. I don't know if I've mastered that certainly, but I'm going to try. So I don't know if you've seen that. You have older kiddos, but I'm sure, where have you seen that in your life?
Yeah, no, Liz, I can certainly relate to that. Even with older kids, you need more patience as they become older. And actually, I think it's a great point and a great exercise to go through because early on, they are unintentionally testing your patience, but as they get older, that becomes very, very intentional. And so the more you can work on yourself and literally concentrate on all these points, I especially like the last one, the non-identification.
Yeah.
The more you can kind of disidentify yourself from it, kind of keep yourself away from it, the better off your whole family will be, and you're going to be more sane, a lot more sane, literally, because we create so much tension and stress and pressure around ourselves that if we can find a way to mitigate that pressure, we're going to help our families tremendously, because we want to have joyful, precious, happy time with our family members, and any way we can help that, it
gets us there.
It's going to get us in a much better place.
Yeah. So staying sane, right? So I'll have to report back on how that's working. But
please. And I can relate to, meditating. I've listened to, a number of your podcasts, and I know you started meditating a while ago, and you're going on and off. And I'm actually doing exactly the same thing on and off, trying it out, see if it's going to work. Some days are better, some days are worse. I'm actually doing the 3-minute meditations, and I've tried different ones. There are some for pressure, some for stress, some for collecting your thoughts. I've been trying different things, and it's more or less trial and error. But taking action, as you said in one of your shows, taking action is what's the most important, what's critical in our life and in our business, everywhere we do. If we take action, it's going to bring us so much closer to our destination.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. So try that out. The women listening, sane, stop, allow, investigate, non-identification. So without further ado, Alina and I are going to jump into the interview. Alina, as we like to share with all of our amazing women we have on this podcast, please share with us your kind of journey of how you began real estate, getting into real estate investing. And I know you have a real amazing quality. I'm sure the ladies listen to the intro of, really getting people into passive investments and tons of apartment buildings to mobile home parks. We're going to get into all that. But for you, how did you get there? How did you, what was your path? How did you begin getting interested in real estate investing?
Sure. Thank you for your question, Liz. For me, real estate investing began about 6 years ago. I was actually searching for a way to diversify my portfolio. It has been always in Wall Street, and it has been a huge concern for me for many, many years, especially since my background in education is in accounting. I'm a former tax accountant, and taxes has always been on my mind as something that I needed to decrease somehow, and I couldn't find a way to decrease our taxes. And I was thinking about real estate for many years, and my husband and I even dipped our toe about 10 years ago, bought a property in Philly, turned out to be a wrong neighborhood, wrong place, and everyone goes through that life experience. And 6 years ago, I decided to try it again. I started researching, reading about real estate, and I started looking for a way to invest. And after doing a search for properties locally here in northern New Jersey, where I live, very close to the city, I couldn't find anything, and I decided to dig deeper and see what are other ways I could invest. So I decided to go out of state. And when I went out of state, my further research brought me to the topic of syndications. After doing evaluations and finding deal sponsors and markets and then the properties, I took an action. I started invested in one, then another, and it was kind of like a trickle-down effect. And after investing for several years, I realized the benefits of syndication. Number one, it was completely passive. I had to do no work on my part. So it was done without any interruption to my daily living, my work, family, and everything else. Number two, it allowed to preserve principal. Most of the deal sponsors, what they're looking for is to actually give you the principal back as fast as possible. And sometimes that fast happens in 3, 5, 7 years, but that's their main goal, to return your principal first, then to allow to pay you dividends, which is your residual income. And on top of it, you get what I was looking for. you get the tax saving strategy, because the way syndications are treated, it allows you to save on taxes, because you get to expense a lot of deductions and your passive losses against your passive income. And that's what makes it stand out. That's what makes it differentiates it from Wall Street, where if you invest in Wall Street, let's say you invest in REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust, which is a pure mutual fund, you'll get no tax benefits whatsoever. And that's a huge differentiator when it comes to syndications. And on top of it, again, it allows you to diversify. So in addition to having stocks, bonds, and mutual fund, you now have a portfolio where you diversify into syndication, where you can invest not only in multifamily, you can invest in other commercial real estate asset classes, mobile home park, storages, assisted living, offices, and list goes on. And on top of it, you can invest nationwide. For instance, in my portfolio, I have no investments locally by me in a tri-state area, and that's unfortunate, but I live in a very low cap rate area in New York, New Jersey. It's very, very expensive. But our investors and I are fully diversified. We have investments all over the place, and we go into the markets that are cash flowing. We're not betting on appreciation. That's not my strategy. But
right.
Going to the market that allow to bring cash on a regular basis. We provide a healthy and nice environment for our tenants. We beautify the communities. So we're doing good, and by the same token, we're making money. So I feel like it's a huge untapped territory, and I'm trying to bring as many investors, women and men, into syndications and allow people to build up their portfolio, preserve their wealth, save on taxes, and build a legacy for themselves and their families.
Oh, that's great. So there's a lot you said there. So you started to do some research along your path and found that passively investing was the route for you. I think that's an interesting point. In a lot of ways, I don't think enough people, especially women and men, really whomever, they don't think through, do I want to be active? How active do I want to be? And how passive do I want to be? And I think that's a really important question, because so many different ways to get involved in real estate investing has literally, you can have a full-time job, right? I mean, if you're, depending on what part of this business you get involved in. And I think that's so helpful for the women listening as you grow your portfolio, or if you're looking to buy your first rental. The question is, where do I really want to be? What are my goals? But really, how active or passive do I want to be? And will that get me to my goals?
Sure.
So, it sounds like you assess that really well.
Yeah.
You also have a full-time job at the time, right? And do you still have?
I still do. I still do have full-time job. And I actually get a lot this question on Bigger Pockets, not for me directly, but I see a lot of people asking, where do I want to invest? How do I want to invest?
Yeah.
Active or passive? And the way I try to explain it to them is, you have to determine where you're at in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a full-time, happy and healthy career that you're progressing and it's taking more than 40 hours a week? Or do you have a very busy business practice and you want to stay in this business and you are actually making pretty good money? If you're great in what you're doing, no matter whether it's your W-2 or your business, stick to it. That's how you know to make money. Continue doing money in that way and invest passively. And that's how I guide mine investors, and which I kind of alluded to, but I didn't finish in your earlier question. So after investing passively for many years, I realized the benefits of it. And out of this, the idea of my business was born. So that's how SAMO Financial came to life.
Got it.
Where, I started bringing passive investors, equity partners into the deals, educating them and explaining to them how syndications work, and connecting them with the right opportunities and the deal sponsors, and really helping people get further along and start passively investing and start diversifying their portfolio out of Wall Street. And so when it comes to whether one wants to be active or passive, so number one is the bandwidth. Do you have the bandwidth to do it? And number two is your why. How strong is your desire to be active or passive in this business?
Yep.
If your answer to number one to bandwidth is, let's say, 5 to 10 hours, then there's absolutely no way you can be active. If you want to be active, you need to work in this business at least as much as you work on your full-time job, if not more. So if you have that much time, if you're driven to do it, to commit to that 40 plus hours, then absolutely do it.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying it's going to stay like that forever. Obviously, as you start, as you grow, you find ways to automate your practice and to do things a lot faster. But at the beginning, it will be extremely time consuming.
Yeah.
You have to be able to commit to it and stick to it. That's very, very critical.
Yeah.
And when it comes to passive, again, at the beginning, you will need to spend a bit more time on educating yourself, understanding how syndications work. And I'm absolutely more than happy to provide that education and guide you along and help you out. I believe that my background in education and accounting and finance will help you tremendously, and I know how to guide people in the right direction. But once you're there, once you're fully educated, you understand how syndications work, you understand how to read the investment summary, you understand what you're looking to gain from the syndication, and where do you want to take your investment portfolio, then I would say 5 to 10 hours tops. And it's not even every week. It's whenever you have the offering in front of you, you need to review it and make a decision.
Sure.
So in the long term, passive investing provides absolutely no interruption to your daily life. So it's perfect for people that have very busy lives and don't want to get active.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. I love that distinction. I just don't think that's a conversation that gets enough, dialogue. And it's something that really people need to be mindful of before they jump in one way or the other. I completely agree. What I thought you said a moment ago too was really helpful around you educated yourself. Now you have a unique background, right? You have a finance background, accounting, sounds like you have a lot of those key skills, which is critical, right? To evaluate these different things. What would you say to the women listening of how do they get really educated in syndications? What are some good resources? What have been some, books you've read, or, just anything you could recommend to if they want to self-educate and really, make sure they're understanding and educating, not just from the syndicator who wants their investment dollars, right? Not that they can't educate, because people come to us and, because we do syndications as well, like you, Alina, and we'll educate. That's part of your job, just like you do. Yeah. But I think when you're learning about syndications, it is really helpful to learn from just in general, so you can really get it before let me learn more about this syndicator. Where might they learn just general syndication information so they can feel educated? Sure.
So there's plenty of education out there, and it actually serves community in many ways, and whatever approach each person likes. So they can read books. The books that I would highly recommend to start with is Gene Trowbridge, It's a Whole New Business, and also Joe Fairless, his best ever book on syndication. Mm-hmm. Those are extremely great educational materials for anyone who wants to read or listen to them. Yeah. On top of it, there are tons of podcasts that they can listen to on syndication. One that comes to mind that I think is a great educational resource is run by Whitney Sewell. Yep. It's a real estate syndication show. It gives a lot of information about syndication. Yeah. And also Invest Her Community. I mean, Liz, you and your husband are a great resource for syndication. You interview a ton of women that are also in the syndication space. So there's definitely plenty of materials and people to reach out to. And the last but not least resource is networking. I think it's absolutely critical to network with like-minded investors through Invest Her Community, through Bigger Pockets, and then locally, go to local networking events. You don't necessarily need to connect with people that are syndicators. You can connect with people that are directly investing in specific asset classes. And whether you're interested in, let's say, multifamily or mobile home parks, connect with the people, talk to them, talk about asset class. If your interest is to invest in, let's say, mobile home parks through syndications or directly, no matter which method you choose, you still need to learn about mobile home parks as an asset class class itself, how it behaves, where to invest, how
Yep.
to pick a market, what are the pros and cons of investing in mobile home parks, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think the sources are out there. You just need to, again, take action and start educating yourself. And it's not a rocket science by no means. And by the way, even if it were rocket science, everyone can get educated. So
that is true. That is true.
Taking baby steps. I understand that everyone is busy, has family,
Yep.
full-time career. I get that. I'm actually in the same boat as everyone else. But if you start taking baby steps, 1 or 2 hours a week, whatever you can devote to it, in a year, in 2 years, you'll get
know.
there.
Yeah.
So as long as you're taking actions, that's all that matters.
Yeah, baby steps are critical. I would also say too, I don't know if you've been seeing this, Alina, and you're in similar space as us. A lot of syndicators out there right now, and there's a lot of good ones.
Yep.
But there are a lot of folks out there right now that are, presenting these apartment building deals, and you start asking them questions about their experience or, how they put the deal together, and they don't know how to answer the questions. So I don't mean that there's a lot of imposters out there, but there are a lot of people in the space right now, talking about apartment building deals, and I would not give them a penny of my money. So I say that because there's a lot of great teams out there, that are doing this type of work. You're working with a ton of them, Alina. We're building a team that's going to be around for a long time. I just say this to the women listening. You got to vet, and you'll learn this as you're educating yourself. Vetting the deal is obviously critical, but even more important, you got to vet the team, not just the person, but the team that's bringing the deal to you. Because things can twist and turn, and you know this, Alina. Not every project, is going to give you the returns that they say they're going to give, and things happen. So you got to know, what is the character of these people that I'm giving my money to? Yeah. Are they gonna, so that is critical. And I've been hearing a lot of different people out there just spouting out numbers, and just, I'm like, oh God, they should just not be doing what they're doing. It's just, not that it's legal, but these are not people who I'd literally give $5 to. So I just say that to just be cautious, be cautious and do your due diligence. That's all. That's important.
Liz, you bring such an important point, and I love how you share it with the audience. I absolutely agree with you, and I actually talk about this a lot. So when it comes to evaluating indications, first and foremost, you need to evaluate the deal sponsor and their team. So everything starts with the person. So talk to the deal sponsor, talk to a syndicator. Are you in line with their long-term strategy? Are your personal interests in line? And I don't mean hobbies, but I mean in general, values. Is he or she and you are about the same things? Are your goals aligned? Do you connect well with the person? Because if there is no connection, if you feel like something is off, absolutely do not go work with that person. I mean, you're going to be investing with them a large sum of money. You don't want to invest with someone you do not trust or have a gut feeling that this is not someone you want to go with. So first and foremost is connecting with that person, making sure that you align with them. And I mean, these days, what's really easy is just researching them. Go on Google, read about them, make sure that they have what they talk about and they are what they share with everyone. Make sure that you find the proof about them, and make sure that this is the person that you want to be investing for a long time, because you're not going with them into just one investment. You're going to be with them for a very long term and probably investing in multiple investments. So make sure this is the person you want to stick to. And that's number one.
No, I love that. And I think that that's also something to keep in mind. Evaluating the deal, obviously, like you said, starting with the person and the team. So to shift gears a bit, I know you've gotten your passive investors into a lot of different commercial kind of asset classes. But one in particular we haven't talked a lot about here on our podcast is mobile home parks. And quite honestly, selfishly, I'm very intrigued by them. I've always been intrigued by them. I have more experience in the multifamily space over the years and flipping homes and some new construction, but mobile home parks, no experience. So what can you tell us a little bit about, and I know there's a lot to that topic, but I'd love to hear your perspective because you're actually, you're at the forefront of putting your clients into mobile home park projects. So what are the things that you look for? What are especially when it comes, because again, I'm thinking in the multifamily space. So what is specific to that asset class of mobile home parks? Just, what's been your experience?
Sure. And just like everyone else, Lisa, I started with multifamily. It was close to home. I lived in apartments, so it was very,
sure, you know that.
Yeah, to relate to that
Yep.
stuff. So,
yeah.
but as we went along, I realized the need for diversification, and not just diversification into different geographical locations, but diversification further into other asset classes. So I done my research. I looked into different asset classes and picked mobile home park as something that would be a viable strategy long term, and also a viable strategy if we hit a downturn. And the reason for that mainly is because mobile home park offers a lot of options that are not offered in multifamily space. And what I mean by that, there is always been and still is a huge demand for multifamily. And because of that, people more or less shy away from other asset classes, and that gives other people opportunities to look into other asset classes. So mobile home park is one of those asset classes that hasn't been looked into very heavily in the past. It's becoming very, very popular now. So it's becoming as hot as multifamily these days, but the opportunities are still out there. So we look for locations where the neighborhoods are very overpriced, and people cannot necessarily afford living in apartments, so they look for an alternative. And there's still a lot of families that would like to have their kids go into decent school neighborhoods. So in order for them to go into decent schools, they need to find an affordable living, and mobile home park communities offer that affordable living. Take for instance Arizona as a state. The rents are very, very high in that state, and a lot of families cannot afford it, but they still want their kids to be in different schools. So that's what we provide through mobile home park communities. Another point I want to add is that a lot of people have this preconceived notion that mobile home park is this dilapidated house that's going to collapse from the next winter. So
right.
Not the case. I mean, I wish we could show people pictures, but some of the mobile home parks that we buy and then beautify, from outside, it looks just like a regular home. It's just a lot smaller and a lot more efficient. But otherwise, it looks like a regular home inside and out. But it's a lot more affordable for people that cannot pay high rent prices.
So when you actually go, so like, I'm just thinking through, like, because again, my head is, and I'm familiar, obviously I've seen them.
Yeah.
And, you have this, I don't know, want to call it, and it's not right, but a stereotype, especially being from the Northeast. We don't, you're in the Northeast with me. We don't have I mean, I bet you they're around us. I just don't know about them. And then I think of the mobile home parks, and I immediately envision, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I'm not sure of what the tenant base is. Now, is it a tenant base? So you go in and buy, I have multiple questions. I have like so many questions pop in my head. Do you go in and actually buy then the land and the home and you're basically renting it back to the tenants, or do they actually own their mobile home park?
Sure.
Curious, how does that mobile home house, excuse me?
Yeah, great question. So in a lot of cases, it's park-owned home, POH, as people call them. So they sold and owned by the parks, which is not obviously our preferred strategy. We would like tenants to own the homes, and there are reasons to that. But what we do is, once we buy the park-owned homes, and by the way, it could be a combination. It's not always that black and white. So when we buy it, when we look for the next tenant, we offer them an option of lease to buy.
Okay.
In other words, they start leasing, and then gradually they go into buying it. We're not talking about something that may cost $50,000 to $100,000. It's a lot more affordable and a lot more.
What's the range? Low end, high end?
Yeah, low end. I mean, it could start as like at $5,000-$10,000. It really depends on the area and the type of house. Yeah, it could start as low as that. So, yeah, and that's what I'm saying, it's a lot more affordable. But what happens as the tenant buy their house, it becomes their home. And, as a homeowner, you want to beautify the place where you live. So naturally, they start taking care of it inside and out, which also means a lot less expenses for us as the park owners, which also means that we're helping beautify the community by letting the owners buy the mobile home and work on them, and then we beautify the surrounding. We're also lowering the expenses, and one of the highest expenses in multifamily is plumbing, and we have very little to no plumbing expense when owning mobile homes. So that's a huge factor. And while mobile homes are priced lower than multifamily, but again, because there is no this high expense, it allows us to drive the income to higher numbers. In addition to that, in general, when the mobile homeowners start owning the homes, we have a lot of other maintenance expenses, gas, electricity, and so forth. So the only areas that we're responsible for are the common areas. So that keeps our expenses very, very low. And my other earlier point is pride of home ownership. Every homeowner, whether it's a mobile home or a regular apartment or whatever it is, they want to be happy in their home, so they're trying to beautify it, and they'll do everything possible to make it look nicer. So that drives the value of the overall mobile home park community higher as well when we do that. And in general, just like in a regular home, in mobile home, people want to have their privacy, and mobile homes do give people that privacy.
Right.
They live in their own home, and it's like you do have neighbors outside, but inside your own home, it's your own place, and you do whatever you want. So it's definitely another factor to keep in mind as well.
Do you find that there's property management companies that specify in the mobile home space? Because I would think it's a little different.
Yeah,
different
absolutely.
Challenges, different issues. I mean, it's all but it sounds like it's a niche. So do you find that it matters? It doesn't matter? What have your experiences been?
Absolutely, yes. We only hire property management companies that specialize in mobile home park communities.
Yeah,
they know how to manage them. And obviously, for a larger community, it's on-site property manager. For the smaller ones, we need to have multiple communities nearby, so the property management can take on them, and the expense would make sense for us economically. But yeah, we only hire people that specialize in mobile home parks community and know how to manage them. And in terms of clientele, I mean, I would say it's the same as multifamily. It really depends on the area. There are some areas where you and I may not want to be even during the day in multifamily space, and the same applies to mobile home.
Sure. It's the same. It's not like any different.
Yeah. There are areas that are only serving maybe senior community, people that are at a different stage of their life. They retired and they want to live in a quiet place somewhere in rural areas of Arizona. And then there are other mixed communities, but again, very, very similar to multifamily in that regard. Every community depends on the area, depends what you're doing to it as an owner, and depends where you want to take it down the road.
Yeah. Is the hold similar? So is it like similar like to a multifamily where you go and try to add value?
Sure.
Okay.
Very, very similar in that regard.
Okay.
You can hold for as little as you want or as long as you want, but like you said, you're trying to add value. One of the huge value add components for us is extra space in the park. If there is extra space, if we can build up and bring more mobile homes into the area, that's definitely a huge value add component that we'll
yeah. And you probably don't need a ton of space. It's because I don't know the exact dimensions of these. Are there different sizes of mobile home houses?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are different sizes. There are
requirements
and regulations, and you have to go by what's allowed in the
what's allowed.
Yeah, but it's definitely something to look for, and it's a space that needs to be learned before someone jumps into the area.
Yeah.
But absolutely learnable, and doable, and very similar to multifamily in that regard.
I get this question a lot on the multifamily space, so I'm going to ask it to you from the mobile home park space.
Sure.
What would you say are the biggest mistakes an investor can make when they're embarking on investing in mobile home parks, whether they're doing it, as a passive investor, or they're the general partner, what have you, regardless of the role they have. If they're literally investing dollars into these mobile home parks, what do you find to be the biggest mistakes that investors make?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes is not doing enough due diligence on the park itself, on the area, on demand in the area, making sure and finding out who is responsible for the water, who is responsible for the gas pipelines, for electricity, looking how many park-owned homes, how many are tenant-owned, whether there is a demand for the mobile homes, whether it's even feasible to do a lease-to-buy option, because it's not feasible in every single area. In some areas, people cannot afford even to buy a house, even to pay rent.
Right.
So you have to make sure that the area supports your strategy. In other words, when you buy a fully park-owned mobile home park and you want to put the parks on the tenants, make sure that the tenants, the population in the area, can afford buying your mobile homes.
Yeah, that's great. So certainly due diligence, but what's interesting is, you could say the same thing for multifamily, but the actual specific due diligence aspects of mobile home parks is different than multifamily, because lease to buy options not something you really concern unless you're doing like a condo conversion maybe, but most apartment buildings you're not worried about that necessarily. So okay, that's a great suggestion. I could probably keep asking you questions, but I want to be mindful of the time. You've been great. I love all the tips and tricks. And I think you also said one other thing I want to just quickly mention before I have you share with how the woman listening can get in touch with you. Is you said something earlier that I thought was very powerful about diversification. And I think you said something, I think what you said was, being geographically diversified, which we've been very mindful of. We also got our start in the Northeast, and then it became very evident that this is just not making financial sense anymore. So we've kind of moved to the Southeast, but we've started to, diversify geographically. But what you're saying, it makes so much sense around the asset class. And I think it's hard for investors who have been in an asset class like multifamily or whatever their focus has been, because they become very good at it. That's what brokers bring them. That's what they know. And there's so much of this business is getting distracted, and you don't want to get distracted. But I think to your point, it is so important to start to incorporate different asset classes, mobile home parks. I know you do self-storage, into your kind of like fold, because it's helpful. I mean, it makes sense, especially if they're very recession proof, which I know. So I just wanted to make that quick point, and I think that's a really excellent point. I think it's just a little bit of a rub, because when you start to become experienced in one asset class, you keep doing it because it's what you know, and people keep knowing you as the mobile home guy or gal, or multifamily guy or gal, or what have you. So it's tough to then break out of that, but again, you don't need to do it alone. You could do it passively. So, there are ways to team up with people that you don't need to be the expert on mobile homes. You need to know enough, like but I think that was an excellent point. I think that was something I just wanted to reiterate as well.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you.
Yeah. So the ladies listening, the wonderful, amazing investors that are listening to our show, where can they learn more about you, Alina, and where can they connect with you?
Sure. They can go to my website, samofinancial.com, or they can find me on social media, Bigger Pockets, LinkedIn, Facebook. They can connect with me anywhere, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. You have so much great information to share. So, and I appreciate you being on our show. Before we get to the end here, though, and Andressa usually does this. So this is, I think, my first time doing the fabulous 3, which is, I'm like, what are the 3 questions? I had to go find them before our interview. But anyway, okay, first question. Most transformational book you've ever read?
So I listen to a lot of books, but I would say the 2 books that come to mind that I always remember and I actually live by is Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Ever since I read that book, I thought to myself, I have to read it again. And if this guy who's gone through the near-death experiences twice already in his life, and he was able to do it, then I should be able to do it as well. Highly recommend that book. I've been implementing Miracle Morning myself and living by it. And another one, it's a funky book, but it's You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. But she brings so much life experience, and she opens up mind for not only women but men as well, as to you have to look inside yourself and see who you really are and what you have. You have so much greatness, but you need to realize all of that potential, and you need to share it with others. So
That's
I
awesome.
love that book as well.
That's on my list too. I haven't got to that one, but I've heard great things about it.
You'll enjoy it. You'll love it.
So what has been your most powerful routine that you do to create a financially free and balanced life?
Yeah, so I kind of touched upon it when I said Miracle Morning, but ever since I read that book, I decided that I need to create my own Miracle Morning routine. And it's a variation of what Hal is talking about in his book, but it more or less involves definitely exercises. So I run in the morning, cold shower, and then like you, I've been on and off with meditation, trying it out, seeing whether it's going to work or not, and just being grateful for what I have in my life. I think that's very, very critical to show how grateful you are for what you have, for what you've been able to achieve, and what's been given to you. And last but not least is just a vision board. You have to make sure you have the vision board to visualize what you see yourself in, like where you're going to be at, and visualize it to the point that this is where you are today. Visualize it to make sure that that's where you see today, and as if this is a present life. And that definitely does work. And I have proven life experiences.
That's great. That's great.
Working.
Love it. So which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
There are a lot of women that inspire me, and obviously, everyone can say Oprah, Mother Teresa, and so forth. But to me, what's important is to see ordinary women around me that inspire us on a daily basis. And I know I wouldn't be in this world without my mom, and I'm really grateful for everything she's done for me. I mean, she raised me on her own. So it was a lot of hard work, a lot of hard labor, working multiple jobs, and while upbringing me. And then, women that I meet at different conferences, and they desire to succeed, and the willingness to do no matter what is so great in a lot of women. Including yourself, Liz. I mean, I'm really impressed by your achievements and what you've been able to do in your life. That it's really fantastic. And my daughter, I mean, in a lot of cases, believe it or not, I mean, I have a high schooler, but you can learn a lot from your kids by watching them, because they're actually a reflection of you. So if you see something in them that you don't like, then stop yourself and think, where is that coming from? Why they do what they do? And, think to yourself, is that something that I need to work on myself to maybe improve myself and change?
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge educational factor that a lot of people just ignore.
Oh man. Wow. You put that in perspective, and I see my son who he has a hard time stopping something. Like if he's not complete, he has a really hard time stopping. And my husband looks at me the other day. He's like, you know where he gets that from, right? I'm like, no. He's like, you are crazy when you have to finish something. He's like, yeah, he has that now. I'm like, awesome. My 5-year-old is obsessive like his mother. Great. But you're right. Yeah, it's great to look in the mirror, right? I can't do that. But Alina, thank you so much for being on our show. I really appreciated all the great insight you've shared, and just a lot of great insight. And I appreciate all your, tips and strategies and resources. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing all your great knowledge with our community.
Liz, it's my pleasure. I'm really grateful to be here, sharing my knowledge with the investor community, and I'm grateful to you for inviting me here. I'm more than happy to help out the community in any way I can. Thank you so much again for inviting me.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, Go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.